Hi everybody, welcome to Series 2 of the Sports Psych Sesh, bringing you the latest academic research and news in sports psychology in an easy and digestible way. I'm joined again by my partner in crime, Owen. Would you like to introduce our guest for our first episode of the new series?
I'd be delighted to introduce Arthur Lynch. Arthur is a powerlifter first and foremost. He's a graduate of the sports science program here in UL. He's also a PhD candidate here in exercise physiology and nutrient metabolism. Arthur is a former natural bodybuilder. He's ranked in the top 10 across the drug-tested Irish powerlifting federations. He's also a personal trainer. He's a powerlifting coach out of City Gym in Limerick. And I've been told to include the fact that his lift total is 680 kilos at 88 kilo body weight for a 439 Wilks score. And my knowledge about what that is not that much, but Arthur is going to explain to us. Arthur, do you want to tell us a little bit about, I suppose, yourself and about powerlifting as a sport?
A little bit about myself. Okay, so teenage fat boy, kind of half decent at rugby. Got into weight training through rugby, and then decided, I prefer lifting weights to rugby. So I packed in rugby and sort of started lifting weights full time, and then ventured into bodybuilding for a little while. Got fed up with that, and then moved into powerlifting, and that's where I am now. So along the way, I've been working in gyms and coaching and applying my trade as a personal trainer, a strength coach. And then, so in terms of actually powerlifting, for anyone who doesn't know, so powerlifting is a sport that involves 3 exercises. You have the squat, which is essentially you have a bar up on the top of your back, and you squat down to the point where the crease of your hip drops past the top of your kneecap, and then you stand back up. You have the bench press, where you're lying down on a bench and you have a bar over your head. Then you bring it down to your chest, pause it, and then you push it back up until your elbows are locked out. And then you have a deadlift, which is essentially just picking a bar up off the floor.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about kind of powerlifting in Ireland then, kind of if someone's interested in getting into it, how they get into it?
Okay, yeah, good idea, yeah. So powerlifting in Ireland, it's something that's really starting to blossom now over the last 2 to 3 years all of a sudden. Like 6 years ago, the Irish Drug-Free Powerlifting Association had 40 members. At the start of this year, it now has 600.
Oh.
So yeah, so it's growing exponentially. If someone wants to get into it, well, you can always contact me, and I can either, if you're in the Limerick or Clare area, I can look into training you. If not, I would know a lot of coaches around Ireland, and I know who to refer you to and who not to refer you to. But because there are a few chancers out there. It's like any industry, you've got to be careful.
So what was involved in your being fed up with bodybuilding? What's the difference between that and powerlifting?
Well, maybe fed up is a strong word, but I sort of grew tiresome of all the aspects of bodybuilding that weren't progressive resistance training. And in fact, the more you get into dieting for show and all that, the less progressive your resistance training becomes, because you will start to lose strength. And for me, I sort of found that pretty hard to deal with. Like I didn't mind so much dieting, or the cardio is annoying and time consuming, but you get over that. But it was more so the going into the gym and just not enjoying sessions, because that's primarily what I love to do. I love to go into the gym and just I love to see progress, even if it's not weekly, but even if it's over time. And when you're dieting, or when you're preparing for shows reasonably frequently, and I define that as once a year, because that's a very short time period, because essentially you finish one show and then you're having to recover for a few months to get back to where you were before you started dieting for your previous show, and then you only have another few months before you have to start your next diet. So it leaves a very narrow window where you're actually making progress, and then you're just trying to maintain as best you can. And then there's the little things that I just never cared for in bodybuilding, like the shaving, the tanning, and I think as well, yeah, that too. But like there's a lot of misinformation in bodybuilding culture as well. Like there's a lot of stuff that's presented as fact, and really it's just no support for it at all. Like it's just it's people's opinions, and sometimes when an opinion gets sort of spread around so much, people start to think of it as fact, but that's just not the case.
And the bro science effect.
Yeah, the bro science effect, I guess. People bro science the shit out of everything,
Yeah.
And of course the problem is that you have people who have fantastic physiques promoting stuff that's just flat out wrong, but people are going to listen to them because of the physique they possess.
Yeah.
They're going to take that as authority as opposed to
the actual science and the literature.
Actual science, or showing some actual data or some form of research.
Right, and you're selling products to impressionable younger people who
absolutely.
obviously are going to go with the person who looks like how they want to look like.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if you're ex-bodybuilder who's ripped and jacked and tanned and whatnot, and you let's just say you're a young 16 or 17-year-old starting out, and you see these guys promoting these supplements or promoting this training plan or this way of eating or whatever, you're going to probably fall for it because you're naive. At that stage you don't know any better, and you think people are well-intentioned, but oftentimes they're just out to make money and don't really have the people's best interests at heart a lot of the time.
And that affects then kind of public perception of bodybuilding, and probably spills into public perception of weightlifting as a wider
and then
concept.
Unfortunately, then like any form of weight training gets painted with the same brush, so a lot of the negative stigma attached to bodybuilding gets passed on then to people who do powerlifting or Olympic weightlifting or CrossFit or any other of the sports that use weight training as their baseline.
Okay. And I suppose, obviously, the Sports Life Sesh here is a sports psychology related podcast, and you're obviously a high performer in the area of powerlifting, the sport of powerlifting. So, can you just give us a little bit of insight about how kind of psychology affects your own performance in your sport? So, various aspects of psychology that you might use in your own performance.
Okay, yeah. So, there's a well-known powerlifter named Dave Tate who released an article a few years back about why someone would fail a lift, and there's three primary reasons. It's either physical, technical, or mental. If it's physical, you're just not strong enough. You just need to get stronger. If it's technical, there's something you need to change with their technique to improve so that the lift is more efficient and that they're able to complete it. And then there's mental. So mental, you may be physically strong enough to bench press 140 kilos, but in your head, you're saying, oh my God, 140 kilos, 3 plates either side of the bar. I don't know if I can do this. And then subsequently, even though you're actually physically strong enough to lift it, you fail. And I've seen that a lot at powerlifting meets. I mean, people have missed lifts, and I said to myself at the time, geez, I was full sure you were going to get that. But so the mental aspect is huge. But the problem is, at the same time, is it's something that hasn't been looked into, in the research. So we don't have a whole lot of actual empirical evidence to support
the psychology of weightlifting.
The psychology of any form of weightlifting, of Olympic lifting or powerlifting or whatever. So we have to kind of just make best guesses on, by applying some general psychology that we know to be true, and then from our own experiences.
So you're kind of making inferences from findings in psychology in other sports and translating that or kind of correlating that into lifting.
Yeah, so we're trying to extrapolate as best we can. No, it's an interesting area of research, and if someone could look into it, that'd be fantastic. Hopefully, in time, it will, because I'm seeing even there's more research going into, for example, bodybuilding and contest prep and things like that, and there have been case studies even done on natural bodybuilders' preparation for a contest. So it'd be great to see if like the same could be done with powerlifting and the psychology behind it.
And then, are there any forms of kind of applied psychology that you use in your own performance? So how do you manage those challenges that powerlifters have?
Well, one thing I would look at, and I suppose this is coming back to the pre-performance routines that we were talking about off air beforehand. There's a concept or a hypothesis known as the Yerkes-Dodson inverted U principle, or theory, sorry. And that's been applied to sports settings. So essentially, like, you have a graph of arousal against performance. So at very low levels of arousal, you have a very low level of performance. As your arousal level increases up to a certain point, your performance will increase. And then beyond that, performance, increases in arousal beyond that point will lead to a drop in performance. And then there's actually the catastrophe model, which is similar, but what would happen instead of after that point of optimal performance, once you get beyond that, you get catastrophe, where performance completely plummets. So I tend to apply that when I'm, say, maxing a lift. And I have a theory that it's different between the three power lifts. I think that the zone of optimal performance for the squat and the bench press is different to the deadlift. So, for example,
in what way?
Well, in the sense that, like, the squat and the bench press are more technical. There's more things to get right and, you know, to think about during the lift. And then, you know, if you were too aroused or too psyched up for a lift, you could potentially forget something or be off slightly, and as a result miss the lift. Whereas with the deadlift, you can kind of get away with a bit more leeway. So I actually feel it's better to be like compared to the other two. Yeah, you can kind of put your all into it. And the thing is, it's the last lift of the meet as well. So, you know, you can kind of go for it.
Are powerlifting competitions, you have to do all three lifts on the same day?
Yes, if it's a full power meet. There's also push-pull, which is just a bench and deadlift, and then the single lift competitions as well, which you can have 1 lift, 2 lifts, or 3 lifts. Well, a full power meet would have all 3 on the same day, and depending on the federation, that will dictate how much time you have in between. Like the IPF, for example, it's you do your squat, you go straight to your warm-up for bench, you're benching, then warming up for deadlift, and then you're deadlifting. Whereas in other federations, you might get a few hours between lifts.
So there's all these different kinds of federations.
Yeah.
What kind of factors go into how one would choose? Like, aren't some you can wear the straps and gear and everything, some you can't, some they test you, some they don't. Like, what internal processes go into choosing the right federation?
There's a few things. Like, for example, there's 2 main drug-free federations based in Ireland. There's the Irish Powerlifting Federation and the Irish Drug-Free Powerlifting Association. They're both quite similar in their technical rules are almost identical, you know, the performance of the lift and whatnot. The only key differences is that the Irish Powerlifting Federation, or as I'm just going to refer to them as the IPF from now on, they allow knee sleeves, and currently the IDFPA don't. So that can actually influence some people. Some people would pick the IPF over the IDFPA just for that reason. The other thing would be how the meets are run. So, like, the IPF tend to do all 3 lifts back to back, and the meets are shorter as well. They have fewer lifters, whereas the IDFPA will have a longer gap between lifts, and some people kind of prefer that. So in that sense, they might choose the IDFPA. Now, both the IDFPA and the IPF are affiliated with an international body, and they're 2 separate ones. So there's the WDFPF, the World Drug-Free Powerlifting Federation, and then the IPF International Powerlifting Federation.
A
And
lot of it can come down to convenience, can it? As in, like, whatever your local gym is, whatever federation your local gym is kind of associated.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you're living in Dublin and there's a meet on in Dublin, you're probably gonna do that one compared to the one in, like, I don't know, Cork or Mayo or somewhere.
Yeah.
So the IPF, as in the International Powerlifting Federation, tends to be a little bit more well publicised and would have sort of bigger lifters than the WDFPF. So that can influence someone's decision to pick the IPF over the IDFPA. Probably confusing people now with all the different federations already. But
I'm eager to kind of bring you back to the pre-performance routines, because obviously it's the subject of my PhD, so I have some knowledge into the function they perform in performers like yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose, can you give some insight into your own pre-performance routine? And how you use it to affect your own performance, and then we might talk a little bit about, we'll say, the theory behind pre-performance routines and how they kind of can relate to you.
But are we talking like the minute or so before you go up to a lift, or
specifically? So essentially,
what's the time frame?
So essentially, yeah, it's
question.
the pre-PI is a good question. So essentially, for people that don't know, the pre-performance routine is broken into basically 3 phases. That's what the literature says. So you've got the physical preparation phase. Then you've got a concentration phase, and then the actual physical execution phase. So I would assume, I'm not sure if maybe there is a study where they've looked at pre-performance routines in powerlifters. I am not aware of one, if there is one. But I would assume, in terms of physical prep time, we're talking about time that you are kind of about to step up to the podium, etc., etc.
Okay.
Then your concentration time is going to be the time that you get in under the bar. To sort of prep yourself while you're actually under the bar, and then your physical execution time is going to be the actual execution of the lift. Then that's what we're talking about.
Right. So we're not like your pre-performance routine is you eat 12 eggs before each meet or something like that.
Yeah. So we're not going that far. So we're literally talking the time frame. Let's say as you're waiting to step up to the bar, while you're under the bar before the lift, and then the execution of the lift itself.
Okay, well, so like first thing I'll probably do, like if I look at the list and I see I'm like 1 or 2 lifters up, there's 1 or 2 lifts still to go before I'm up on the platform, probably like take a sip of water, or maybe sometimes a caffeinated beverage like a Monster or a Pepsi Max or something like that.
If Monster or Pepsi Max are listening, we're open for sponsorship.
I won't say no to that. But then usually the room tends to be quite warm, so you'd be sweating. So I would tend to put a lot of chalk on, step in underneath the bar, take a big breath of air, and brace my core, and I'm ready to go. Then I have to wait for the judge to tell me to actually squat. So you can't get so psyched up that you squat before he tells you to, he or she, and because you fail the lift. Then even if you actually perform the lift perfectly, if you go before the judge's command, you've automatically failed. Then for the bench, it's kind of the same, but the thing is, I'll just put on more chalk. So like with the bench, I'll chalk the soles of my shoes, and even the back of my shorts, which of course looks ridiculous, but it's just to prevent me sliding on the bench. And then with the bench, then I'm usually going to take a lift out from either my training partner or an official who's there on the day. I give him a countdown, so it's 3, 2, 1. Then I take the bar out. Then I'm ready to begin my lift.
Are there any?
That's all kind of part of the whole, 3, 2, 1, go. Now we're ready. Now we're ready to lift. Are
you aware of any of the underlying thoughts you're having during the routine? Just so we'll say immediately prior to lift or during the actual execution, are you aware of any self-talk that you're doing or anything like that? Or is it more of kind of a unconscious process, an automatic process?
It's probably unconscious, and if there is any kind of self-talk in my head, I'm trying to minimize it as best I can and just try and focus on the actual technical execution of the lift. Because if I start focusing on other cues, that tends to fuck me up a little bit.
So that's interesting that you're saying that, because normally in terms of pre-performance routines, we like looking at, let's say, elite performers, expert performers, because what you tend to get is like an over-learning of their specific skill. So like pre-performance routines obviously work best in like self-paced tasks like lifting, where you're initiating, for the performer is initiating the task, the skill. So normally, as I say, we look at elite performers because they tend to have over-learned the skill to the point where they don't have to think about the actual biomechanics of the lift. But in lifting, it seems to be slightly different, is it?
Well, let me backtrack there slightly. So, okay. I mean, I'm not going to be focusing on every little thing,
okay.
But I am going to be, like, for example, there's things that I do, like there's little technical imperfections in my lifts that
okay.
It could be one thing in each lift that throws me off. So say, for example, in a bench, if I'm going to miss the lift, it's usually because I brought the bar down just about a couple of inches too low on my chest. So I'm just cueing in my head, right, make sure to bring the bar down high.
Okay.
Because I have a very wide grip on a bench,
okay.
and for me to press in a more efficient manner, I need to touch higher on my chest than someone who would have a narrower grip.
Okay. I'll stop you there for just a second, because that is fascinating to me, because that's very similar to like a swing thought that an elite golfer would have, where they might be trying to just hit, if they can hit one position in the swing, so it might be a position takeaway or something like that.
Yeah.
That they notice they hit that position and the swing is going to be technically perfect for what they need to achieve. So it seems to be a very similar process in which they might have one technical thought or one. So in golf we call it a swing thought, we might be calling it a lift thought or whatever you want to call it here. So that is definitely fascinating. Is that the same across the lifts then, or is that just in your bench?
No, there's usually one thing that I tend to mess up on each of the lift. Like sometimes with the squat, I don't sit back far enough, and then I get pitched forward and I fail the lift. And the squat is like, if you're a couple of inches out, or if you're coming down and the bar is coming out, like instead of coming down in a vertical line, if it's coming even the slightest little bit forward with me, it'll throw me off.
Okay.
I won't always miss the lift, but it'll make it harder for myself than it needs to be. And then with the deadlift, my positioning was off for a long time, and I used to miss lifts halfway up.
Okay.
So working on that and cueing myself to start, try to pull myself into a more upright position earlier on in the lift.
Okay.
That actually put me in a better position to lock it out, compared to the way I was, because I was more bent forward, and the bar would actually move quickly from the floor to about halfway, but it would get stalled then because of the mechanically inefficient position I put myself in.
Okay.
Whereas if I start with the bar moving a little bit slower off the floor, but in a better position mechanically, then I can actually lock it out better at the top. Hopefully people can visualize that and it makes sense.
Yeah. Do you ever train with people who know the judging really well and can like critique you and everything? Because how do you if you didn't have that, it'd be really hard to like internalize critiquing yourself. This is a perfect angle or something like that.
Why you have 250 kilos on a bar?
Well, the thing is, every session I will record my sets, and I will always take videos, because I mean, you could have a training partner who you've developed a good relationship with over the years, or even your friend. But the problem is, even if they notice something, sometimes they won't even tell you, because they're like subconsciously they don't want to disappoint you, or like the worst thing you can tell a client, if you're a coach or your training partner, after a good lift is, or after a lift is, good job. What the fuck does that mean? That's given me no actual technical feedback on my execution of the lift.
We were just learning in our class yesterday that the whole compliment sandwich, the say something nice, say the critique, say something nice, with elite performers, often they need even more positive feedback, and it's harder to give them negative. But you're interesting in that you really 9 negatives.
Yeah, tell me what I fucked up on, because the way I see it, the more areas I have to improve, once I actually go about actually improving them, the more I'm going to add to my lifts. So I'm looking for ways to improve all the time.
It's like growth mindset, isn't it? That challenge, try to praise it.
Yeah. Because my lifts aren't that great. They could be a lot better,
So what processes were involved in choosing to be a natural power lifter, or like what factors do you think people consider when either deciding to go in untested or natural powerlifting?
Well, I can't really speak for anyone else in this, but from my own perspective, I just kind of want to see what I can do naturally. I'm not in the sport that long, and I'm still making steady progress, so I don't see any need to go down that road for me.
And just to be clear, like, just because somebody's in a non-natural powerlifting federation doesn't mean that they're definitely on.
Oh, not necessarily at all. No, absolutely not.
Right.
But just means those federations aren't tested.
Right.
Like, there's no obligation for you to use if you're in those federations.
They don't come with the membership fees.
No, I'm afraid not. Yeah.
So you wanted to see, like, how far naturally you could push yourself.
Exactly, yeah. And, apply some of the stuff that's in the literature, or that perhaps that I will be investigating with my own research in years to come. That kind of way. Like, I just want to kind of see what I can do, see what my own genetic limit is naturally.
So we don't have to talk about specifics, but what are your general, like, PhD research interests?
Well, I actually hate this question, but
you can take it out.
At the moment, like, my area of interest is like omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acid feeding and adaptations to resistant exercise, or some sort of augmentation of the adaptation to a resistance exercise program, or for example, could we perhaps use fish oils to enhance recovery in trained subjects? So people who are used to weight training, and if they're familiar with it and they're experienced, can we shorten their recovery time through fish oil supplementation? That's kind of, broadly speaking, that's what I want to look into.
Cool. Good answer.
Are you a fish oil taker?
When I can afford it. Periodically.
Yeah.
I have sort of like issues with some like supplements and the quality of them. Like,
that's a good topic. Supplements in the exercise community.
Well, the psychology of supplement taking.
Psychology of supplement taking.
So we can move off gear for a little bit, but supplements. Supplements are a huge part of weightlifting and powerlifting, and sold to the fitness community, and they hopefully do what they say they do. Sometimes there's other stuff, sometimes there's benefits, sometimes there's negative aspects. Can you talk a little bit about what supplements you've used in the past, or what you maybe like want to advise against or advise for?
What's in the literature that says what's effective, what's not effective, and we'll say, let's touch on why people
Or not even in the literature, like in your personal experience, though.
Well, we need a little bit of kind of setting some sort of an operational definition of what's,
right.
what in inverted commas works. Like protein powder works in the sense that it's a source of protein that you can supplement or use as a substitute for a whole food source of protein. So let's just say, for example, you have a busy day and you haven't had time to cook some meat or some eggs or something, so you slam a protein shake. Like that works, Creatine monohydrate works in the sense that it has been shown to be effective in increasing repeat explosive performance, provided your creatine stores are not already saturated. So, for example, like if you have a very high meat intake and your exogenous creatine stores are already saturated, then supplementing with creatine further won't give you any performance benefits, which is why actually it's been shown to be quite effective in vegans, for example.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Fish oil works in the sense that like it's been shown to be effective for like cardiovascular health. Shown to be effective in a number of sort of disease states like arthritis and things like that. Kind of a little bit equivocal in terms of like inflammatory bowel disease and diseases of the colon and things like that.
Caffeine
is 100% effective. Yeah. In fact, caffeine is probably be my number one supplement. I mean, if I had to choose one thing to use, it would definitely be caffeine, because it just flat out works.
Yeah.
Sitting beside you in our office here in UL, I can tell the listeners that Arthur is fond of a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I'd be interested. So you were saying earlier that vegans creatine monohydrate would be a good source for them because they wouldn't have a saturated exogenous creatine, whatever, because they don't eat meat. I wonder where the powder creatine is derived from, if that's like vegan.
Good question. I'm not too sure.
So we've mentioned the effectiveness. So protein powder can be effective. Caffeine definitely effective. Creatine is an effective supplement. Fish oils are an effective supplement. What's marketed out there, do you think, as this kind of super effective supplement that the science behind it is kind of shaky?
Any form of creatine that's not creatine monohydrate, for example. So, I mean, there's a load of different forms of creatine that are more expensive than creatine monohydrate and claim to be far superior than creatine monohydrate, but it's anything but the case.
Okay.
The boring creatine monohydrate is the way to go. Outside of that, see, I tend to kind of not bother myself with all this, because I know most supplements are a load of crap anyway, for the money you're paying anyway. Some of them, if someone was giving them to you for free, probably, yeah. Well, if you're on a budget, don't bother with them.
So these pre-workout powders, these like amino acids,
pre-workouts, they work,
but that's because the caffeine is the
more so because of the caffeine and some of the, as opposed to some of the other stuff that's being promoted. You could just take straight caffeine,
Yeah.
You probably perform better. Yeah.
So stuff like the BCAAs, those kind of.
They're effective in the sense that they will promote muscle protein synthesis, but if you haven't got other essential amino acids there, and you haven't got the energy in the form of calories to knit together more muscle tissue, then branched chains are pretty much not much use on their own. When used as a supplement to a diet that contains sufficient protein, they're a good idea. Now, I will take them during training, because oftentimes I'll be training for a few hours at a time, and it's a good stretch of period before I've had any or since I've had any protein. So they're just an idea just to help sort of mitigate protein breakdown, for example, and try to keep me in a state that's closer to anabolic than catabolic.
So if you had a young athlete come into your gym and asked you about what supplementation they should be taking with their training, what's going to be your response? What's the go-to response?
First thing is context. So, I mean, has he got his diet in order? Has he got his training in order?
Okay.
And after that, you'd look at any kind of deficiencies, or even just, say for example, if it's just very hard for him to get in sufficient protein intake, which is quite an important thing, for building muscle, for building strength, for recovering from sessions, etc. If he or she truly can't get enough protein in their day, then I would say to them, right, supplement with protein powder. It just really depends on the context. For the most part, I tell people not to bother and kind of just spend their money on food.
Okay.
Because that's if you had to choose one or the other, obviously food is more important.
Yeah.
Spend your money on food, not on the supplements. Especially if you're a young lad, who doesn't have a whole lot of money.
Okay.
The Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, pretty much. And is it worth talking about the supplements industry in terms of the way it's regulated or the way that it's not regulated, or is that getting away from the...
We don't have a P.O. box that would
deal with all the litigation.
Get all of the lawsuits that we get from that.
I could do without being sued, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll.
I don't even know a whole lot, to be honest. But like my general recommendation would be like, you know, if it's to supplement your diet to make up for some deficiency that you can't get through just what you're eating or drinking, then fine. If it's something that will boost your performance, say for example caffeine, yeah, that's fine, as long as you're not taking it to dangerous levels. Because I mean, there is obviously an upper threshold beyond which you can run into trouble. If you're on some kind of a tight budget, don't do it. Yeah, I think that'd be generally it. Yeah, what I'd say there.
Well, great. On that note, I think we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
Arthur, I'd like to thank you for joining us. And thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
You want to handle the social media? We haven't done it in a while.
If I can remember it, yeah. So everything can be found on sportspsychsesh.blogspot.ie. We're on Twitter at sportspsychsesh. We're on Facebook, just sportspsychsesh on Facebook. And YouTube, we're also Sports Like Sesh. So like, comment, rate, subscribe, all the good stuff. Right. Welcome back for Series 2. It's going to be great.
Yeah, we got a lot of more great guests for everybody. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.